Um, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We're delighted to welcome you. I know that there are nearly 100 in the live Zoom conference, and I expect there are a good number watching the live stream on YouTube. Um, my name is Bill Wharton. I'm the headmaster of the school. Most of you know that, I suspect. I'm going to say a few remarks tonight, and then we're going to hear from 5 seniors about their experience. But this is the art show opening. Were this a normal art show, we would at this point be walking around the building looking at the students' work that's hanging up on the walls. But given that we're doing this virtually, we have the show up virtually. I hope you've had a chance to log in and look at the virtual gallery. Our art teachers have done a remarkable job putting that together, and the students' work is great as well. So if you have seen it, we're delighted. If you haven't looked at the virtual gallery, do so after the talks. So I will begin. And the other thing that I will say is, this is always the time of year we encourage people to tell your friends about Commonwealth. We're a well-kept secret. We're always looking for ways to reach out to families and prospective students who might be appropriate for the school. And this event, which shows off the talents of our various kids, is often inspiring, and we hope that you'll pass word on. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to say welcome to the parents of incoming students to your first official event as Commonwealth parents, and welcome to any incoming students who may be with us as well. To current parents, thank you for coming. To parents of seniors, welcome to what may be your final school event before graduation. And to current students, welcome to you. There are only 8 days of school left, not including finals. Our communities have been facing massive disruption these past 2 months, but I've been inspired by the readiness of faculty and staff and students to carry on as we've moved online. It hasn't been easy, but teachers have kept teaching, students are learning, and we've all been buoyed by the support shown by parents and our broader community. Our art teachers have creatively refashioned their classes, and it's a testament to their dedication and the student spirit that we can present this year's show in the virtual gallery. But over the last 6 weeks, we've seen other signs of resilience and hope. 2 weeks ago, we hosted Commonwealth's Virtual Model UN, or Virtual Common, welcoming 60 students from area middle schools. By all accounts, the day was a great success, and our visitors and hosts were upbeat at the end of that day. Our seniors in the last month have received college news that overall has been very gratifying. Students have organized virtual concerts, movie nights, thanks to Netflix Party, and virtual community service to support our place, the Daycare Center for Homeless Children in Cambridge. At our daily virtual announcements, students and teachers have shared poems to celebrate April's Poetry Month, and we've had various dress-up days: wear your bathrobe to announcements day, mask day, bring your pet day, among others. And all of those have helped keep spirits up. We've had weekly virtual assemblies, including poet Major Jackson, another by Commonwealth alumnus Jake Kreilkamp, an attorney in Los Angeles, who spoke about his civil liberties work with the ACLU there. And a couple of weeks ago, we heard from Natasha Scholl, an NYU professor who spoke of the psychology of gambling and the lessons that designers of social media have learned from casinos. Other things that have happened is a group of teachers and students have planned a virtual Hancock weekend for this coming Friday and Monday, along with other fun activities. And we are planning a virtual graduation for June 5th, as well, we hope, as a live celebration at some point when we're able to get together later on in the fall. The commitment of the faculty, staff, and students leaves me confident of our ability to carry on in the fall and beyond. But tonight, we turn to the artists and to seniors, and we celebrate first our students' work in the arts. Our virtual arts show focuses on visual arts, but I have to give a shout out to our performing arts as well. In early March, our students, under the direction of Susan Thompson, mounted a fine production of the Caucasian Chalk Circle at the Cambridge Multicultural Arts Center. Assemblies this month include Commonwealth creative writers sharing their poems and stories, many published in our literary magazine, Helicon. And this week, we'll be hearing student musicians offering recorded performances. Next week, we'll enjoy some sketches and scenes presented by Susan Thompson's acting students. And our students have earned accolades outside school as well. For current parents who receive our weekly newsletter, you've had a chance to keep abreast of the stream of awards, reading about our students who've won prizes in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and musicians who've shown in all districts and all states, and a couple who are auditioning for All National. I hope that what you see in the art show and what you hear at our various performances through the year gives ample evidence that our students turn out remarkable work and that they're as committed to the creative work in the studio and on stage as they are to their academic subjects. When we talk about the liveliness of life and work at Commonwealth, we're pointing to this full commitment to their work and to each other that makes the effort its own reward. It informs all that we do here, and it nourishes and sustains us. Our students know what it is to give themselves fully to a task, and we think that will be evident to all who visit the galleries. And now to the seniors. This is a senior class that has showed remarkable resilience as they and we have faced an unprecedented challenge in their final months here. At the very moment they, the seniors, had worked through all the normal challenges and triumphs of 4 years at Commonwealth. They've seen and grown more, in a sense, than young people should have to in high school, but it has been impressive to watch and a privilege to work with them. So tonight we celebrate the class of 2020. Because we are small, because we work so closely with our students, and because we care not only about how well they read, write, and think, but also about the kind of people they grow to be, we enjoy hearing and seeing the young adults that our seniors have become. Many of the teachers, and perhaps many of you, remember tonight's speakers and their classmates as tentative young ninth graders. 4 years ago, we could not have guessed whom among the class we would choose to speak tonight or at graduation in a few weeks. There are 31 impressive students in this class. The 5 you'll hear tonight will give you a sense of the range of interests and character in that cohort. So after you've heard these talks, consider that there are a few dozen other students with stories as compelling as these. So tonight we'll hear from the following in this order. First, we'll hear from Aunnesha Bhowmick, who came to us from Norton Middle School and will attend the University of California at Berkeley next year. After Aunnesha, we'll hear from Alec Mathur, who came to us from McCall Middle School in Belmont and will attend NYU after a gap year next year. After Alec, we'll hear from Nathan Lee, who came to us from Elkhorn Elementary and Middle School in California and will attend Swarthmore College again after a gap year next year. After Nathan, we'll hear Alex Ding, who came to us from Shanghai High School and whose current plan is to attend Brown University next year. And finally, we'll hear from Elena Gomberg, who came to us from the Jewish Community Day School in Watertown, and next year will attend Rhode Island School of Design. And I'll just add that Nathan's presence tonight proves that having a first name beginning with A was not a requirement for selection as a speaker, though among tonight's speakers and our graduation speakers in a few weeks, he is the only one who would not have met that requirement. That was a little bit strange. Anyway, so without further ado, I will introduce Aunnesha. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aunnesha, as Mr. Wharton kindly introduced. Would you believe if I said that one of my favorite parts of the year is exam week? And no, it's not because I'm crazy about studying nonstop for hours on end. And I'm not saying it's the easiest time of the year. Exam week is stressful, but in my experience, there's something particularly rewarding about it. And that feeling starts to kick in right as I walk into a bustling Dartmouth lobby after a long weekend of studying. It's extra busy as piles of backpacks fill up the spaces between the couches and benches. And there are students from all grades, some doing last minute studying, while others are just talking, stressing, complaining together. And there's always the helpful mantra you can recite with your friends: if we fail together. And that feeling follows me right into the exam room where I sit surrounded by familiar faces. And then there's that satisfaction of pouring all the time and energy I've spent into this exam alongside my peers who've worked beside me and with me. And when I can finally walk out of the exam room, all of the rigor feels worth it, especially when it means my friends and I can get hot pot in the wintertime or gelato from the Pru in the summer. Exam week isn't the only demanding part of the school year though, so my friends and I make sure to have little traditions to look forward to. For every school play, we book our calendars for the Friday show and spend the whole week thinking about the good meal we're going to have. Commonwealth School plays, however, are not the most straightforward. There are always a lot of metaphors inside of metaphors or Shakespearean dialogue, so the tradition has evolved a little over the years, especially after the first few school plays when we realized that maybe we wanted to understand what we'd be seeing instead of being like, that was great, but what just happened? So, along with a perpetual debate over what restaurant we're going to go to, we have a dramatic reading of the play's Wikipedia synopsis, and we found that to be pretty helpful and a lot of fun. We really look forward to those post-exam excursions and Friday night dinners, but my group of friends is best known for de-stressing in the ceramics studio, and they're always de-stressing, so basically they live there. And I've never had an affinity for art-related things, but I'm there because they are. But after years of watching them make these incredible things, and with their encouragement as well, I finally decided to take sculpture this year. I wish I could say that I absolutely fell in love with it and that I found my hidden talent and that I'm some sculpture goddess. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And in fact, it was really hard. Most days I struggled with progress or ideas or got frustrated with the process I couldn't get the hang of. There weren't many aha moments, and at times I asked myself, wait, why am I taking this class? Regardless, I'm actually very grateful that I did. I have made one giant yellow mug that I am very proud of, but more than that, I now have a better understanding of why it's important to do things outside of your comfort zone, and why I should push myself even when it doesn't really seem worth it or rewarding. Sculpture was definitely not a stress-relieving activity for me at school, but in a surprising turn of events, it has become just that during quarantine. When virtual school started, for 2 weeks, Kyla, our ceramics teacher and sculpture teacher, tried to get us to do something creative and art-related, but I didn't feel motivated at all. And given my love-hate relationship with sculpture at school, I didn't see how it would help in this even more difficult situation. Kyla eventually sent out an official assignment, and when I lamented to my parents about having no motivation or inspiration, my mother kindly offered to help me out. For my project, I decided to create a tea set out of recyclable materials. And suddenly, sculpture became the homework I looked forward to every day. I couldn't wait to spend the evening at the dining table, crazy gluing plastic lids and cork, or carefully painting delicate flowers on yogurt cups. And it ended up being a good bonding activity for me and my mom. And I'm no Monet, but I'm enjoying painting a lot more than I thought I would. So I learned that even the stressful things like exam week, the difficult things like sculpture, or the confusing things like school plays, all have something unexpected to offer. Mr. Wharton always gives a speech at the beginning of the school year to the incoming class, telling them that he hopes they fail at some point in their Commonwealth career. And I don't want to steal too much of Mr. Wharton's thunder, so I'll try not to spoil the rest of his speech. But failing is definitely an important skill to learn. At Commonwealth, though, beyond failing or succeeding, what I found most valuable has been the joy and the satisfaction and the spark in the challenge itself, and getting to experience it all with the people I love. Thank you.
Thank you, Aunnesha. Thank you. And we will go next to Alec. And let me turn on the spotlight there. Okay. Thank you, Alec.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Wharton. My name is Alec Mathur, and I've always believed in the power of words, and that, like any powerful thing, I believe they deserve to be used carefully, respectfully, and deliberately. When I was little, I was terrified of writing in a new journal. I thought I might make a mistake, misspell something, do the words wrong. In doing so, I'd have destroyed something sacred and forever left a record of my mishandling. That doesn't scare me anymore. After 7 years of writing consciously, I've come to believe that what is sacred isn't the pristine page and all the potential therein, but rather the rough draft, which I believe has infinitely more potential. The mathematician David Hilbert made the generally accepted statement that real numbers exist and can be manipulated as complete entities. But another, L.E.J. Brouwer, said otherwise. He saw numbers as constructions, as processes, with each digit being revealed by a choice, or a calculation, or by pure randomness. This system is called intuitive mathematics. It is tempting, I think, to view writing and words in the fashion of Hilbert, as things that exist and have meaning intrinsically, and are conveyed by a writer who found a story to tell. I find, along the intuitionist lines of Brouwer, that every writer invents language, to some extent, when they set out to write. No writer starts with nothing. But even in retelling a folktale that has been told 1,000,000 times before, that 1,000,001 telling is a unique act of creation through the choice sequence of each letter and each word. It's hard to create. Even God rested on the seventh day. No one's first creation is ever perfect, in either the standard sense of the word, meaning without flaw, or the more archaic meaning of complete. We're always building on the things that we've done before, and those things live on through these later iterations. When I first started writing in 6th grade, all of my stories ended the same way. The main character's horrible, tragic death. More importantly, though, there was always a moment when, despite the main character's expectations to the contrary, they were deeply mourned. They weren't technically good stories, and I didn't share them with many people, but they were works that I needed to have exist. I often worked with the text in white, so I wouldn't have to read what I'd written. Just knowing that I'd done it was what mattered. It was about each choice in the sequence, not about trying to perfect the whole work. Later, those characters stopped dying. They'd get just about as close to it as they possibly could, but someone would intervene, and instead of the scene of mourning, there's a moment of intense relief that there is no need for it. It got easier to share and to read back my work. It was technically better, yes, but more importantly, I was more comfortable with the idea that I'd never reach a perfect draft, no matter how long I worked on something. I got comfortable with the idea of good enough. I've been editing for friends for nearly as long as I've been writing. And like with many things, it's far easier to apply what you know to be true to others than to yourself. I've always been a kinder editor to others than myself, particularly through my work as editor-in-chief of Helicon. I've come to believe that the most important thing a new writer can learn is to love their work as it is, and to love that perpetual process of growth and creation. I've been handed works that look completely unedited, like not only a first draft, but the first draft that a writer has ever written. They remind me of my own start, and I do my best to give them the advice that I would have wanted then. I tried to balance the comments that improved this work now, with the comments that encourage the start of the next work and the work after that. Some things are only ever truly learned through experience, no matter how many times they might be taught. So sometimes the most important thing you can do is to push someone to keep going long enough that they get there on their own. I said before, no work is ever perfect or perfectly finished, but there does come a time to walk away and to start on the next thing when that work is good enough. I feel that sharing what you've created is the last step before moving on. It's a moment to say, I have made this, this is mine. In a way, that ownership of this imperfect thing is a final sort of acceptance. It feels fundamental to me. Mr. Singer, our computer science teacher, sent around the information for a poetry challenge called Escape Roll. There are 30 prompts, one for each day of April, and you're challenged to write a poem each day. I did it, and while I didn't write one every day exactly, I now have 30 poems to show for it. And more importantly, we all have a little writing community. As soon as I decided to participate, I knew I didn't want to do it alone, so I organized a group to share our work and to meet as close to in person as we can. We read them aloud. We've decided to try to keep the group going, although a poem a day is a bit too much to manage indefinitely. It was a more intense form of the writing process because it was so compressed. There wasn't time to agonize over it if you wanted to keep up, and everyone was encouraged to share works that they weren't completely satisfied with. Some of those poems we'll come back to and work on until they're good enough, and some we won't. But there's been a sense of closure from the reading aloud of the work either way. Creation with a capital C is a shared experience. I believe that creation with a lowercase c is as well. Especially in times of crisis and in divided places, it is important to take the risk of being misunderstood and underappreciated, because the rewards of being seen, of being known and understood become so much greater. This has been a somewhat difficult speech to write, a difficult connection to remember when everything feels so detached, both us from each other and my present self from both my past and my future. And yet, much like those stories I wrote back when I was 11, I've found writing it to be its own reward. I hope you will look up Helicon and read some of the works we've collected there, and that you enjoy the rest of the art show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alec. Thank you very much. And next up, we'll hear from Nathan Lee. Go ahead, Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Wharton. Hello, I'm Nathan. And as I think we've all experienced, it's difficult to really appreciate how something like 4 years can just disappear until they're already gone. That's not to say that nothing happens. In fact, quite the opposite. I was born in Stockton, California, into a tight community of family and friends. I could run 2 houses over to have sleepovers at my cousins, or go less than a block away to play video games at my friends. I never really thought too much about school there. It was dull, and high school after that wasn't going to be any better. I always hoped I could do more, but didn't really expect that sort of opportunity to drop out of the sky. Then one night, I found a Commonwealth information packet sitting on my desk. Apparently, it came from my mom. I looked through all the perfectly composed pictures of students laughing and talking, and read through the gorgeously constructed descriptions of learning in Boston. It seemed so far away, but I thought, oh, what the heck? What's the worst that can happen? And applied. Then I got accepted. My family and friends were jubilant, more so than I was. I was worried they'd hate me for leaving. Do it, and don't forget to call us, they said. So I left with my parents and came to Boston. Whenever I talk to my family in California, I always complain about the snow. I remember freshman orientation. It was a day-long excursion to Thompson Island. Before we left, we played some icebreakers and had some time to talk and get to know each other. I remember being really nervous. My mom texted me a script to read out to people, I suppose to help me make some friends. I'm Nathan Lee. I'm from California. What's your name? I didn't actually read it out to people. I was too shy. I just showed the text to them on my phone, which worked just as well. That got me talking with people, and I met my classmates, then made my first few friends outside of California. There's this tiny office in the basement of the school where we like to go after lunch. It belongs to David Hodgkins and Susan Thompson, who were rarely there, so they let us mess around as long as we didn't touch anything on their desks. It was tiny, probably a 10 by 10 foot room. They also kept all the orchestra instruments there, so we were always packed shoulder to shoulder. It was a little claustrophobic, but it was nice. Sometimes we like to play the upright, like totally out of tune Yamaha that was there. Sometimes somebody would encase their instrument and show off whatever piece they were working on. One that always came up was the Hyde Cello Concerto in C major. One of my friends, Alex Ding, had been chipping away at it for a while and liked showing us the latest on his progress. There was a piano part for it too. I remember him asking me to try it, but I wasn't terribly good at piano. I only got as far as the first 3 bars, and we soon found out that there were far better piano players in the room, but I rather enjoyed sitting back and listening to Nevin fill the room with Chopin. I joined chorus too. I couldn't really sing, I just liked the music. At first, I didn't really participate. I just sort of mouthed the notes while everybody else did the work for me. But over the course of a few months, I became more comfortable singing using, air and making actual sound. I feel especially bad for whoever stood next to me freshman and sophomore year. I did a lot of belting then. I like to think that over time I got better. My grade didn't improve, but singing requires a kind of bold assertion, to want to have your voice be heard. Developing that kind of trust in myself helped me build a sense of confidence. And when the seasonal concerts rolled around, I got to make some proper music with my friends in the vaulted space of the first church outside of the cramped office. So while I managed to get comfortable living in Boston, the academics were a different problem, English in particular. I remember handing in my first assignment, an analysis of a passage in Romeo and Juliet. I got a C, the lowest grade I'd seen ever. I remember looking over my essay in shock. There were annotations, comments, grammar corrections, all written in tauntingly bright red ink. Apparently, my writing wasn't great, but in my defense, I'd never encountered an English teacher who did more than just hand back essays with stickers on them. So I struggled for a while, but then in sophomore year, I started working with our English tutor, Jacqueline Harris. That period from sophomore year to junior year was the most intense learning period of my life. We worked in the tutoring room on the 3rd floor, which was more of a nook in the side of the building with barely enough space to fit a desk. We pored over every piece of writing I generated, from essays to lab reports to even the emails I sent her. We spent hours deconstructing every paragraph, sentence, and phrase, while she drilled me in proper grammar, diction, and structure. I began to see sentence diagrams in my sleep, and I found the arbitrary rules and conventions to be frustrating. I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider giving up on English. But I'd say right after the start of junior year, I began to see an artistry in the arbitration. My English grade went up, but most importantly, I began to develop a deep appreciation for writing. So I applied for a Capstone Project right before senior year started. I wanted it to be a culmination of everything I had worked for, to prove to myself that I hadn't left California for nothing. Thinking of that, I was reminded of how much I missed my family. So I decided to do my capstone about them, a writing project as a celebration of both my heritage and the place I left to become who I am today. I have to give my thanks to the work of Ms. Harris and my capstone advisor, Ms. Brewster, for giving me the confidence and nerve needed to embark on something like this. I remember the first time I greeted the school's heavy oak door like it's still yesterday. I remember a young, plucky Asian kid having lived in the Californian suburbs all his life, suddenly being thrust into the heart of Boston. But I'm a much different person than I was back then, having grown in ways I could have never imagined, thanks to the inspiration of both my mentors and peers. I still get a cold shock whenever I see old pictures of myself and think, who's that kid in the back with the funky hair? Oh wait, that's me. But despite our differences, I can still see myself in him. And as I head to college, I'm looking forward to seeing how I'll remember myself another 4 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. It was great. Thank you. And next up, Alex Ding. You're on, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wharton. So hi, I'm Alex. I'm really glad I can be here to just take a few minutes and share my stories with you. The last 4 years for me have been quite a ride. I ended up doing some really cool things that I never really expected to do, like signing up for the fencing team 4 years in a row, despite the commute, I'm sure some of you here are aware of what I'm talking about, and doing some academic research, which I really liked. But perhaps the most surprising thing was how much music came to mean to me, and honestly, just how much better I got on my instrument. As most of you know, I grew up in China. Back there, every kid played a piano and every other kid played a violin. But unlike here, you rarely ever see a cellist. The only reason why I ever picked up the cello was actually because my dad decided that playing an unpopular instrument would help me stand out in school applications. To some extent, it worked. I never really practiced, but I easily made principal cellist in my middle school orchestra, since the only other cellist never showed up for rehearsal. I still remember when I first came to Commonwealth and Mr. Hodgkins auditioned me for the orchestra. He asked me to play, I think, an A major scale, and then I asked him what an A major scale was. He quickly gave up on that idea and just told me to play a little, whatever I was comfortable with. About 4 measures into my solo, he stopped me and said that he had heard all he needed. After the audition, Mr. Hodgkins gave me the number of a cello tutor, Javier, in case I wanted to take private lessons. I'm still not entirely sure why I ever decided to call that number, but I'm sure my fear of public embarrassment in front of an orchestra of superior musicians was a contributing factor. Plus, if I was playing an instrument, I might as well play it well. On our second or third lesson, Javier handed me some spare tickets to a concert. A winner of some music competition was performing the Algar cello concerto. I had never really actually been to a classical concert before. I've been to one in the sense that my mom dragged me to a concert hall to experience culture entertainment once I was 5, and I slept through most of it. Since I had nothing better to do that Friday evening, I called up Nathan to go together, and the concert actually blew my mind. I guess it never really hit me just how much skill and musicality went into playing something like this. I thought that if one day I could be able to play the concerto and sound like that guy, I would die really happy. And I still look back to that moment as the day when I started practicing because I wanted to. Well, fast forward a few years, here I am, preparing to play the Algar cello concerto for my senior recital. June the 4th, by the way, mark your calendar. And the last few years didn't just pay off in me becoming a better musician. You know, for as small a school as we are, we have so many talented musicians. And I made friends with them, with some of you here, just playing music together. For all the many chamber music groups that we formed throughout the years, and for being able to hop into Mr. Hodgkins' office during a free and just sight read some random sheet music we printed off the internet, I'm grateful. I know that music will follow me for the rest of my life now, and it might not have been the case if not for these amazing experiences. So thank you, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. And finally, we will hear from Elena Gomberg. You're on.
Hello, I'm Elena, and here's my speech. When I find myself in the window seat in the art room, looking down on the Commonwealth Mall, whether the mall is pretending to be an autumnal calico cat, bristling coolly in the winter, or shivering slightly under the light green chiffon of the first leaves and the pinkish foam of magnolias and apple trees, as it must be now, I like to imagine that I am not in a tall Back Bay brownstone, but rather in a ship headed out for adventure down the Technicolor River below. That's what Commonwealth has been for me, from the very beginning of my voyage. A great, beautiful ship taking me from port to port, from country to country, from era to era, of course with frequent stops at the great globe itself and all the necessary visits to Galileo, Caesar, and Charlemagne. This sense of constant movement, of forging on ahead in search for sometimes a deeper truth and sometimes a merciful end to a mathematics homework, never left me, us, as we sailed along. Like in any company of good sailors, there is a certain camaraderie in each Commonwealth hallway. Shared textbooks, or a shared mourning for their absence. Shared pencils, of course never to be seen again by the original owner. In short, an idyllic, if somewhat rowdy scene, missing only tap dancing from a production of the HMS Pinafore. We cheered when new members of the crew came aboard and waved and assured one another it was only the salty sea splatter on our cheeks when our older friends lighted ashore among the distinct din of commencement at the first church in June. There are few places I have visited in my life that have felt as much like home, have been as sweetly familiar and yet always newly inviting as 151 Commonwealth Avenue. Each room, each flight of stairs, each inch of the carpet closely retains a memory, not unlike the dreaded food stains Mr. Wharton deservedly reprimands us about. How ironic is it that I am reading this speech to you from my own living room, and not our dear old Café Gymnatorium, in which every crack in the floor feels like a good friend. One could say this speech is something of my official farewell to Commonwealth, so indulge me as I ascend the familiar intertwining staircases for one last time. The morning starts as I open the Dartmouth doors and am yanked out of my half-comatose commute state by the always surprisingly challenging task of finding my name among the 130 others on the sign-in sheet. I pass an unenthusiastic gaggle of upperclassmen brooding over their coffee on the Dartmouth lobby couches. As I start up the stairs, my hand is reassured by the sturdy wood railings, and I wonder how many hands like mine have been grateful for their carved wooden warmth. As always, I am reminded of that unforgettable post-exam haze in which I and a couple others listened to the aria of the Queen of Night from Mozart's Magic Flute at least 3 times, huddled up in the stair landing in a somewhat fire-hazardous manner. Second floor. A bit dark and infinitely cozy, it conceals behind mysterious doors the infinite worlds of the library, the shaded Gothic of 2C, the delicate and glassy arboretum of 2A, and of course, beyond the glass, the magnolia tree, each year a gentle miracle. Prints and paintings wink at me, some teasing me as always by their slight tilts, and as always, I stop to straighten them, knowing full well they will return to their mischief as soon as I turn my back. Third floor. Snatches of a somewhat discordant chorale float my way from the freshman cubbies. Like an orchestra tuning for its eventual raucous blast, these sounds are muted now, muffled by the sleepy cotton candy of the morning. Fourth floor, my personal favorite, though I must admit I am a bit biased, as it has been my home base for the past 3 years. Here, everything is quiet, for now. Soon students will crawl in and I will see, or rather hear, the process of their revival to a new day, as like molecules in their chemistry problems, they start to bounce off one another's greetings, slowly warming up the sunrise-stained hallway. I drop my backpack and coat and proceed to the art room, the most magical room of the building, in my opinion. Here, the window-shaped patches of sunlight have already been laid out to dry, lighting up the orangey floor. The air is silent and crisp as I walk through the room, enjoying every step. I land in the window seat and look out the window down at the waves of the Commonwealth Mall and think, I'm on a ship, headed straight for the public gardens. Swan boats, beware! The day has begun. But of course there's also the coffee-smelling, perfect for playing sardines basement, and the 5th floor with its distinct inky and clayish smells of the print and photo lab and the ceramics room, and the cozy garret offices of the teachers, each hiding behind their doors the seemingly infinite knowledge and kindness of the occupants. If I tried to go through each room of 151 Comm Ave, I'm sure I could find snippets of my 4 years here, like a forgotten candy stash in each one. But then you all would be here listening to me till next morning, and also, maybe now is not the time to think about this. After all, a longer lost candy stash is so much more exciting to rediscover. All I can hope for now is that maybe the next time I go in search of my stashed away memories, among the lollipops of light bulb moments, the fudgy chocolate of long art projects, the bonbons of over-annotated books, I will find the furled sails of Commonwealth, the brave frigate, ready to take me on a new adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. That was great. And thank you to all of our speakers. Five, as promised, five very different takes on the last few years here. That's the formal part of the evening. Now, there are 112 people in this particular conference and some additional people listening on the YouTube live stream. For those of you who are here in the Zoom conference, what we thought we might do is invite anyone to ask questions. The art teachers, Samantha Nieto, Caleb Colpitz, and Kyla Toomey, are here. They're the three who put together the virtual art show. We figured if anybody had questions about the art show, you could ask Caleb, Samantha, and Kyla. Or if you had any questions that you wanted to put to any of the students, we could do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower the hands. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself and simply speak up. Or if you open your participants window, there should be a little raise hand function, and I'll be able to see it and call on you. That's what we do every day at our virtual announcements. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask or put to our speakers or our art teachers? Alec.
I have a question for sort of all of our art teachers. How long did it take you to photograph all of the artwork that would usually just have been hung up or put on shelves around the building? The galleries were really impressive. I hope everyone has had a chance to take a look at them.
I'll go quickly. Photography was quite easy because all my students just sent me digital files, so I was fairly lucky in that. But it did take me a few hours to actually go through, organize all the artwork, and make sure that all my students were included. So my eyes are a little strained from that, I would say, but maybe 5-6 hours of trying to just organize everything in the gallery space.
Caleb, you spoke about that earlier before the event.
Yeah. The photography was pretty quick. It was being on the computer, learning how to use the new software to put the art show together and doing all the photo editing. We could only have a certain number of pieces in each gallery. So if you walk around the gallery, you'll see that there's like collages, and we made those on Photoshop outside of the gallery and then imported them as one piece. So that's what really took the time. The time that I spent photographing work, I spent about a day, but it was nice because I was at school and it was kind of nice to be somewhere other than my own home and studio.
I'll second Caleb's sentiments that it was nice to go into school, but a little bit bittersweet to see all the work that is in process still, the things that weren't finished, that maybe can be finished. And photographing was a very different experience than arranging things. It took a lot longer than I think we thought that it was going to make the virtual galleries, but as it all came together yesterday, I think we talked for a moment about how important it felt to do that for all of you guys and to show the work in the best light possible. And we were happy to do it, and we're so proud of all of the work that you guys did all year. So.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Ms. Dale, you have a question.
I do. It's kind of open-ended, but I've been so impressed in my conversations with advisees and students when I hear about how you guys pivoted on a dime and came up with really creative assignments. And I was wondering if you could share one or two of the assignments that you set our kids, because they were so interesting. I wanted to do them myself. Maybe Sam to start. Samantha, I don't know.
I just assigned, so I had to sort of think about resources and tools that students had access to, and then sort of make things a little easier for them too. And so one assignment I created was called Sound Photographs. And so I went and saw sounds and sent these 6 sounds to students, not disclosing what they were from. And then each student had to come up with a visual interpretation of what that sound represented to them. So it was really nice to receive these assignments back and sort of see the different array of work that the kids came up with and what that sound meant to them, and sort of talking about how personal context and memory sort of, you know, can shape that for us too. And then another assignment that I also created was having the kids actually go out on Google Street View, which is accessible online, and having everyone really explore the world and sort of use the screenshot option on their computers to photograph in that sense. So it was really neat for me to see all the kids really travel and take advantage of this tool that we have accessible to us and sort of go explore, take the knowledge of photography that you know, and really, you know, take the time to slow down and set up these frames and photograph in a real world sense, except on our computers.
No, they were amazing. Thank you so much, all of you. You kept the kids engaged in such a creative way.
Thank you.
So the sort of 2 parts to the assignments that I gave was first to the students to look for materials that might be in their home. Again, sourcing materials became the big question, particularly with the loss of clay, which truly broke some hearts. But we watched a quick video in which an artist talks about sort of making anything, like sourcing your materials, making yourself available to the universe to find those materials. And then when you do, what you make from them. And so we made what we called pandemic pots, or I called, and I think they sort of played along with. And so we started by thinking about the ideas of form less than function, because the materials we were working with don't have the ability to hold hot coffee quite the way that ceramics does, or other things, or just sculpture made from really anything that you have in your home. And the second part of the assignment was potentially to take those things, and we looked at the history of still life painting and sort of curating groups of objects, maybe the objects that they had made, finding things in their home, and sort of recreating paintings with the closest approximations that we have in our home as a sort of new way to look at the spaces around us or the objects around us. So those were sort of the 2 assignments that went into the work that is in the gallery.
Right.
I'll say for all of my assignments, my goal for the class was kind of solidified in the 4th quarter, having to write out the assignments in a new way, and have students working only with what they had at home. My goal is always to have students really like observing the world around them in new and exciting ways. And now the challenge was that world had shrunk really, really, really small. So I started the quarter off with students looking around their spaces, and you'll see in the gallery some just like drawings of their own rooms or a room in their house, and they would draw it from a bunch of different angles, really exploring that one space very intentionally. And as we've moved through the quarter, it's gone from looking at the space around you to starting to look like inward. So now we just got through a little lecture on surrealism, and they're now like thinking about their inward worlds, and we'll see how that looks. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Matthew, do you have a question on the iPhone, on Elle's iPhone?
Yes, I'm here with Locke from. I have a question for the students, and it's about this transition into online learning, this amazing transition that they had to make out of necessity. Even though it's been very difficult, I'm sure. Have they learned anything from that process, or learned anything about themselves in making that transition and doing schoolwork online as opposed to in the school?
Any of the speakers want to
Yes.
jump in there?
I can say something. I'll
Yeah.
keep it short so Alyona can add to it as well. Yeah, I think it's really been for me twofold. One is an exercise in discipline. The struggle, I hadn't, I think, realized how attached to my routine I had become, and attached to this routine that I'd sort of perfected over 4 years. That was like from when my alarm went off to when I got off from the train in the evening, like everything was scheduled and I'd like perfectly structured. And then losing that completely was sort of threw me into limbo for a while. But I think it has been somewhat reassuring to learn that I can much quicker now than when I was a freshman sort of restructure that routine and find the discipline to stay focused and productive. I think the other thing I learned was that Mr. Wharton mentioned that we'd moved our Model UN conference online. I was the Secretary General of that conference, so I was sort of overseeing that transition. And I think the big thing I got from that was that there wasn't really an emotional aspect there. It didn't feel like it was a panic. It felt like we have like 3 weeks. The plan has changed, just keep going. So I feel like that was also sort of an interesting experience with sort of leadership in crisis that I found to be sort of a reassuring thing to have been able to practice in this somewhat more controlled environment than out in the wild.
Thank you. Anyone else? Elena, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think that for me it has been a sort of discovering of the fact that even though the building, as you know from my speech, is very dear to me, the connection still is there with the students, with the teachers, and actually the art assignments have been unbelievably helpful in finding, in keeping the discoveries I have made in classes before as exciting and as sort of personally revealing as before, which has been really, really great.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Any other students? Lessons learned? Yes, Aunnesha.
I think Alec touched on this briefly, but just learning about resilience. I remember when we first went into like virtual school, or when it was announced that we would have to transition to a virtual school, I and like my friends and I, we didn't think that like we could even do it, you know, like the idea that we're gonna close out our senior year like this just was like unfathomable to us. And we're just like, no, this is impossible. But we're doing it, and I think we're doing it really well. And I just think that kind of taught us all, me especially, that like no matter what the circumstances, I and my classmates, we can always adapt and survive no matter what comes our way. So I'm really proud of our grade for, you know, surviving and being resilient.
Hear, hear. You guys have been great. Thank you. Any other additions? Any other seniors have anything to say? Okay. Any other questions for our art teachers or our seniors?
I just had a comment. You were all
Yes,
so creative. Both the writers, the seniors, we're so proud of you, and my colleagues. You guys are just amazing, and you continue to give us ideas, and you know, I just feel very very lucky to have a group of colleagues that are so creative.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you. The headmaster who hired me, Charles Chatfield, was also an English teacher, and he was famous for his ability to just sit in an English class for minutes at a time waiting for students to come up with some comment or question. I'm not sure I have his patience. So Alec has shared in the chat room the link to the literary magazine, heliconmag.com. Go to that if you want to read some remarkable student writing. And please avail yourself. The virtual art galleries will be up for the remainder of the year at least. So you have plenty of time to go and look around those and enjoy them. And I will say, and as you can see, they're available at comschool.org/art-show. So enjoy those. Thanks once again to our student speakers. You guys were terrific. And I want to thank all the parents, current and incoming parents, and parents of alums. We have some of those here this evening. Want to thank you for joining us, and all of the students. Thanks for coming tonight. Have a very good evening, and we'll see you soon, we hope.